We're going to be using Tinkercad to create kowhaiwhai patterns. And when we look at kowhaiwhai patterns, they look very complicated, and indeed they are, they're very beautiful. But we can also see that they have some simple building blocks. So we can use computational thinking skills to break down these complex patterns into their simplest forms, and then use our mathematical knowledge to understand how we can then create these patterns. So if we look at the top kowhaiwhai pattern here, we can see that it's got, in the horizontal plane, it's got reflective symmetry. We can also see that it's got rotational symmetry as well. And the same goes for the middle pattern here. We can see longitudinally it's got horizontal reflective symmetry. And we can use this understanding here to break the model down and to make it easier for us to create something. Again, if we look at the bottom, we can see here it's got reflective symmetry in the vertical axis, but it's also got rotational symmetry around the center point of each part of the pattern. And once we understand how these patterns are made, we can see how we can reduce the pattern to its simplest elements. And then once we've produced the simplest element, we can then rotate and reflect the same pattern to create the overall kowhaiwhai pattern. And that's what we're going to do in Tinkercad. When using Tinkercad, it's really important not to leave things to chance and just try and make things happen organically. We need to use these tools because they make things very accurate. So we're going to be making our kowhaiwhai pattern and relying very heavily on these 4 particular tools here. We've got the group, and then the ungroup, we've got the align, and we've got the reflect tools. And using these tools will help us to create an accurate pattern, and one that's going to work ultimately and look neat when it prints off. For this tutorial, we're going to be looking at this particular kowhaiwhai pattern, and I'm going to be concentrating on the white element of this particular pattern and then repeat that with a rotation and reflection process. You can choose any pattern you like, but I'm going to just do the white element here in this tutorial in Tinkercad. Here we are on the work plane, and the first thing I'm going to do in Tinkercad is I'm going to drag out a cube. And I'm going to change the color to white, so it reminds us of the white pattern that we're going to be working with. And up in the top corner here you can see I've got the pattern there to remind me what I'm doing. Now I'm going to resize this cube. I'm going to make this 30 millimeters. There we go. And I'm going to make this, let me think, I'm going to make this 12. And then I'm going to make this 4 millimeters high. And that's all I'm going to do. I've just got this object here in the center of the plane, and it's going to, just remind ourselves, it's going to be 30 millimeters by 12 millimeters. In fact, let's make this 15. So we've got a ratio of 2 to 1. And it's still 4 millimeters high. Now I want to use the triangle here to be my object, to my triangular prism, to be the object that I want to cut to make the diagonal shape. So the first thing I want to do is orient myself so I can actually turn this through 90 degrees. So I just want to click on this and 90 degrees, keep it nice and accurate. And then I want to rotate it here by 45 degrees. And now that will, if we come back to home, this will align with the corner of my shape. Now I'm going to make this exact. So this object here was 30 millimeters long and 15 millimeters deep. I'm going to use those same figures here, but I'm going to make it slightly shorter. I'm going to make it 2 millimeters shorter, make it 28 millimeters long, and I'm going to make it 13 millimeters deep. And I'm not worried about the height. I'm going to now turn this into a hole. And then we're going to use the first of our tools here. I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to use this tool here, and I want to reflect it. And then I want to reflect it. There we go. So I've now got 2 objects that I can use to cut out the corners. And you'll see what I'm trying to do here in a moment. So I'm going to first of all highlight these 2, so this one can just sit out of the way. I'm going to highlight these two and use the hole to cut the corners off this white tile. So I'm going to use the align tool, and I want them to align to the center here like that. That's right, I want them aligned like this. Just make sure they're aligned the way I want them to be. Yep, that's looking good. Not quite. I don't want that bit over there, so let's click over here. I want them to align here. That's better. So it's always best to check to make sure you got what you want. Yes, I want it aligned, the right angle aligned to that corner, and the point down here to cut off slightly beforehand. So that's what I want. Click on that and click on the combine tool, and I've now got a slightly cut off shape. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to click on home. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we can see what's going on. I'm going to highlight both of them again, and I'm going to use the align tool. I'm going to align to the back like that. That's what I want. That's perfect this time. And I'm going to click combine. And if we click on top, what you can see now is I've got the start of my repeating, and I'll reflect that in a moment. We're going to make the actual koru shape and reflect those in a moment. So that's how we start making the first part of our white shape. I've zoomed in slightly onto my white shape. In fact, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and align this corner. Let's just click on this. I'm going to align this corner, snap it to that corner down there, because I want to use this line here, this quadrant of the triangle, to align or create the koru element of the design. So I'm going to make the koru element with the tube here. I'll just drag this out, and we need to edit this. I'll make it white so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to change the wall thickness. I think I probably need to make that 1.5 millimeters. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's good. Let's come to home. We want it to be 4 millimeters tall. Click on top. So now I've got this shape here, and we've got to just try and make the koru fit inside here without going over the edge. This baseline here will be the edge of our kowhaiwhai pattern. So we need to do a little bit of judicious trimming here. So I'm just going to squeeze this slightly and stretch it to get more of a, and this is just kind of a feel for what's going on here. That will probably do. And now I need to create a cut across this shape with another square. So I'm just going to drag this here, and I'm going to use the rotate functions. And I'm going to just create it. And you can make several cuts to do this. Let's come back to top. Zoom into this. What do we think that might look like? That might be okay. I think we'll start with that. And I'm going to combine those two, and I've now got this object that can join like this. Zoom in a bit more, see what it looks like. And we can squeeze this up, and I probably want to align this, and that seems to have floated above. Yeah, so if we want this to be 0, and just make sure this is still 4. Yep. So this seems to have sunk through the ground. I need to make that 0. And let's have a look at the top here. Zoom in. So we still need to make sure this doesn't get too big compared to the line here. Let's just tip this up and make sure we're still aligned. Yep, we are. So I'm just going to squeeze this up a little bit more, and it's just a question of feeling around. It snaps to where you want to go to. That's looking okay. That's okay. That's still 4, correct. Right, so I'm starting to make my koru pattern here. I'm going to copy this now, and I'm going to make it a bit smaller for the inner koru. And I think what I might do is I might crop that slightly as well. Just drag a cube out and about there, and I shall combine those and bring that back into here. Then I can use the rotate function and start creating. This is again probably needs to be a bit smaller. Right, so I've now got the makings of my, and we can fiddle around with this, make it a bit thicker. That's better. And that's better. Right, so now I need to make the ends of the koru, and I'll do that with the cylinder here, and I'll start with making it, let's making it 3mm by 3mm, and again making that 4. Now it doesn't need to be perfectly symmetrical, but as we look at this now, we can offer this up and think, okay, that's kind of okay. And we can squeeze it, make it a bit more, and we can rotate it a little bit. That's looking okay, and maybe that's better. And we'll copy that one and put that back on the surface. And we don't want it to be 7mm tall, we want it to be 4, and we'll make this 2 and make this 2, and then offer this over to here like that, and probably rotate that as well. That's looking pretty good. So let's have a look at this. Let's look at top. Yeah, that's looking good. So now I want to create this into an object. So I want to select these. Let's move this away. I want to select these and create those and combine those into a single object. Let's create those. I've now made a white one. Now we can zoom out and we can see here that I've now created a, let's just make sure it's going to snap to my grid. That's what I want. I've now created this object, and if I copy that and then I can drag this out of the way, let's snap that back to there. Let's click on this object here, use the reflection tool. We want to reflect it this way and then that way. I can now bring this into here like that, make sure that still sits inside my object. And now I've created this object that's got rotational symmetry, and I can now group these, ready to now make the complete pattern. Right, so we've now made this into a single element of our kowhaiwhai pattern, and now what we need to do is we need to select it, and we need to copy it and paste it, and then click on the reflect function, and I've now got the ability to snap those two together. Let's just zoom in a little bit, make sure they're looking good. That looks pretty good. So I can now group those. So let's group that, make that a group, and then copy that, paste that, and there's no need to do any more. I can just snap those together now. And you can see we've now started to create a repeating pattern. What's important to make sure though is that when you do this, they're joined together there. You don't want a seam when you print, so let's just click those together and let's join those. That's good. And now I can come down to here and I can paste one more time and click these together, and you can see, again, zoom in, make sure they align up, and we've now got a repeating kowhaiwhai pattern made from one simple shape. As your pattern gets more complicated, you can wait a little bit longer for the computer or the server at Tinkercad to actually combine that into an object. Now we need to create a base for this to be printed on. You could obviously now convert this into an STL file and print it off, but let's put it onto a base. So let's work out what we're trying to create. I'm going to click on this and get the dimensions. So it's still 15 millimeters tall or deep, and it's 180 millimeters long. So I'm going to now drag out a cube, and I'm going to make it 180 millimeters long. And let's close this. I'm going, that's 15, and this one is going to be this white one is 4 millimeters, so let's just make this one 2, and I'm going to keep it red for contrast, and we can use our align tool. So select both of these together. We want to use this tool here. We want them to be in the center, and we want them to be in the center, and that object is now ready to be printed. You can print that out, and you've got a kowhaiwhai pattern. Obviously you would only get that unless you got lucky enough to have a 3D printer where you can change the colors. You would get that in your one color, but there we go. That's your kowhaiwhai pattern ready to go on your 3D printer once you export it as an STL file.